For more on the Mexico election, I'm joined now by Laura Carlsen. She's the Director for the Americas Program at the Center for International Policy, a non-profit think tank. Laura, thank you for joining us. Can you begin by telling us the significance, the impact of this election? How may this election transform Mexico?
This is the first time that a left-leaning candidate in recent history has had a lead and has had such a significant lead, with a real possibility of winning the election and being granted the election, because we have to take into account that many historians believe that Andrés Manuel López Obrador actually won the election in 2006. In this case, though, he's going into the elections with a 20 to 30% lead in the polls. And the general feeling is that with that kind of a margin of advantage, it's impossible for the system to flip the election or to steal the vote, which unfortunately has happened in Mexico's past. What that means is if López Obrador becomes president, there'll be some fairly major transformations in both the economic model and the security model, which are two of the main points, as was mentioned, where people feel that the current situation cannot continue. We're looking at a country that has basically had flatline growth for the past 2 decades, where there's 200,000 people dead since the war on drugs was pronounced, and over 36,000 people missing, disappeared as a result of the violence that spread across the country. So the status quo became indefensible, and at that point, a vast majority of the population decided that they'd opt for change.
And also, Laura, we know that it's not just the presidential election going on, but the election for seats in the Congress. More than 600 of them are up for grabs, and also local elections where local officials could hold considerable clout over local policies. How will those elections offer checks and balances, if any, to the office of the presidency?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because we've been out with a group of international and national observers today, and unfortunately what we're seeing is that there's a high degree of participation and expectations on the part of the people, but there's also a lot of irregularities going on in terms of taking people, vote buying, and the violation of electoral laws, or apparent violations. They'll have to be investigated throughout the country. And now a lot of that is being focused on the local elections and the legislative elections, as if the parties in power, which have been the Institutional Revolutionary Party currently in power under Peña Nieto, and the traditional ruling party, and the National Action Party, the conservative party, they are attempting to preserve political spaces, and they're focusing more of their attention on these local and legislative races because they have more of a possibility to preserve power there. So what happens is very important. López Obrador could win by a landslide and find himself in a kind of an Obama situation with a legislature against him that severely limits his margin to make what he calls the 4th great historical transformation in Mexico. And then it'd be a battle every day to see exactly how far the president can go. The presidential system is very strong in Mexico. The president has a lot of power. It's not quite as balanced a system as it is in other places. So it's an open question, and we'll know a little bit more when we find out how these legislative races turn out.
We'll definitely see how the votes turn out and the policies of the future president. Laura Carlsen, thank you so much for your time.